nominated over 80 trees that later became national champions. Been nominating big trees for over 20 years here in Oregon. Frank is a native Oregonian, and graduated from Marshfield High School in Coos Bay.
Not proud of that. The building was condemned. It still is.
It's still standing.
It's still standing, but
they don't get around this stuff.
No.
Graduated from Marshfield High School in Coos Bay. After a stint in Vietnam, moved to the Rogue Valley, where he now lives in Gold Hill, and where he's the owner and operator of Callahan Seed Company. I wish I could tell the group a bit more what you do at Callahan Seed. I know you collect native seeds from around the world, propagate them, and also.
Well, we more or less specialize in native seeds in the Pacific Northwest due to Homeland Security. That kind of put a crimp on things. You've heard of D. Portland, Oregon? D. Portland, not Portland, D. Portland. Getting things in and out of Portland sometimes is problematic. And I just got tired of dealing with every time I had a shipment that came in from China that supposedly had drugs in it. And it was inspected, and they sent me a bill, $200 on one occasion, to allow the parcel to come in. And I said, what is that for? Well, that's for inspection. We suspected drugs in your shipment. I said, well, if you would have looked at the phytosanitary receipt on the top, and the contents of the package, it was all given. You didn't have to look. So I ended up paying $200 to get my shipment. And you know what that's like, passing that on to your customers. It's not good. So I have terminated all overseas purchasing, and I'm sticking with the Pacific Northwest now because they still treat me good out here. And you know, other than interstate commerce laws, we're okay. So
well, I turned over half my duty to you, but
okay.
So, welcome, Frank Callahan.
If you read the Mail Tribune, just recently, Land of the Giants. These are some good friends of mine who are running or ruining Oregon's Big Tree Program. Anyway, they went out for a little tree climb from up in the Big Pines area. Let's give it in the paper. But anyway, we've got a pine up there, Ponderosa Pine. That tree is now the tallest pine on the planet at 267 feet, give or take about 6 inches. They actually climbed to the top of the tree, measured the candles up at the top to see how well it was doing. At max, it's about 5 inches a year is the top growth for getting on that tree, which is pretty phenomenal. The tree probably, the way things are going, is going to continue to accelerate, and we'll probably 270, 275, 280, we don't know. We always have to watch the weather, windstorms, wind shearing, all those little problems that come up. But anyway, it's always good news. The trees make the first front page. There was also another thing on big trees. This was outdoors. I don't know if you caught that. But anyway, it's up here. I'm not going to tax your time on that. We'll talk a little bit about big trees, how you go about measuring these things. And the first thing that we want to know when you're out there in the woods and you're measuring a tree, how big around is it at 4.5 feet? Now this is not universal. In Australia they go 6 feet. Here we do breast height 4.5 feet. So we want to know what that tree is around, unless the tree happens to branch a little bit lower. And then you tell the American forest that, you know, we've got one at 2.5 feet. Because trees don't pay any attention to the rules. they do kind of what they want to do. So we take a tape. I think I've got one here. And you can pick these things up at our favorite little china shop. This one happens to be in engineer increments and regular foot increments. Now everybody knows what an engineer's increment is. 10 inches to the foot. It's a lot easier to figure diameter breast height with one of these. And usually when I talk about a tree, I don't talk about the circumference, I talk about the diameter. Because diameter is, I mean, if I say it's 6 foot DBH, diameter breast height, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if I say it's 27 feet 6 inches around, you're going, how big is that? It's big, but it really doesn't tell you anything. So I do DBH all the time. We'll just say the circumference and you divide it by pi. Next thing we want to know, you all carry a GPS, right? I've been carrying one since Trimble came out with these things. That was years ago. I can't even remember back in the 80s, I think is when they first came out with a GPS. Well, anyway, it gives you the exact location, and we like it in latitude, minutes, and seconds. So you can do it any way you want. We'll convert it. But when you send this data into the American Forest or the State Forestry, they want that in. I didn't bring my camera tonight, but we also need a picture of that tree. Because we're not going to believe it, just like that. Because some of these trees are unbelievable, as you'll see when we start showing what we've got. This little instrument here is what I use out in the field. It's called a laser or an impulse. Anybody that works for BLM knows what these things are. And Rick Perry would be proud of it. That's the governor of Texas. I'm using both hands. Remember that statement? Anyway, what you do, your first shot that you always take is one of these things. I don't know if the laser's going to. This does a visible laser. I have to put on my glasses for this. Because you have to dial the thing in. There we go. Now I'm going to ask the machine. You've probably seen these along the freeway too. And you slow down when you see them. The same unit has a speed device in it too. So when I'm out there,
trees don't move very fast.
Trees don't move very fast. So anyway, what I do is I take a shot from here. Okay, it's 20.9 feet, right to the wall where I'm shooting. I'll take another shot here. Notice I'm using both hands. And I take another shot here. Then I ask the machine, it's just giving me the wrong number, by the way. I don't believe that. 40-some feet. I don't believe that. But anyway, this works when you're out in the woods. Oh, I probably should mention these things are rather expensive too. You don't want to drop them, that's about $3,500. But I've been out in the field and I've used the Adelites. Those can run about $24,000. And if you drop it, make sure you're under it.
That's for measuring tree heights.
That's for measuring the tree heights, right. These things are fairly accurate. In fact, there's two guys that climbed the tree. This pine, we were right within a couple of inches of the actual height of the tree. So it's fairly accurate. And we took a shot. When you're using this to do actual measurement, I didn't bring the tripod. You need a tripod. You don't freelance it to shoot off the hip with it because you can miss by quite a bit. They're really accurate. But then again, we do need that location on the GPS.
Is there an old-fashioned version of that?
So what now?
Hang him around his neck.
What's called? Oh, the clinometer? Yeah, here's an old-fashioned version. And say if you just forgot everything that I just told you, and you got a walking cane, you know how to measure a tree with a walking cane? Put it up to the base of your eye. Go to the top of the tree and make sure you're holding a 45. Have your buddy check it, just for the heck. Is that a 45?
90.
No, 45 from here. This will 44. This will be a test. Anyway, whenever you hit the 45 mark and you walk backwards on flat land, and if it's on a slope, you just make flat land. That's the height of the tree. And I've taken this up against the clinometer and been within a foot. Now, if the Adelaide, on the other hand, is for really serious tree height measurement, the thing is accurate an eighth of an inch and 3 miles. So we're not going to miss that pine needle by much. But the thing is, you've got to see what you're shooting at. And if you have a tree with a large crown, like a large oak tree, it's hard to get in and get that shot. Because you have to kind of estimate where the top of that tree is, then come back and shoot and get your angle. 45 doesn't work a lot of the time. If you're in a heavy coniferous forest, the trees are close together, a lot of times you can't see the top, you can't see the canopy. You don't know where the top of that tree is. In cases like that, they've actually taken a helicopter, taken a plumb bob from the helicopter, and measured from the base of the helicopter, flying over the top of the tree. That's if you've got lots of money and you own a lumber company. Lumber companies often do that just for...
Bring some giggles.
Yeah, bring some giggles, of course, and to show that they can. So the Garmin, I'll just give you a little history. Started in 1989. Garmin was named after the two fellows that started it, Gary Burl, Gar, and Min Kao, the Chinese fellow from Taiwan who helped him out. So Garmin became available. I used the Trimble in the beginning. And I had a horse that could carry it. Those things were monsters, big machines, but they were really accurate. I went to Creel, Mexico, Chihuahua, Mexico. We were at the airport, and they had the precise latitude and longitude right there, and the precise altitude. So this was a test. It was raining like hell. I mean like hell. So I grabbed a Ziploc bag, put that thing in the bag, go up there and set it off. Everything was perfect, except it was 10 feet off on the height. You know how that made me feel. I'm taking this thing back. Then I realized the military was skewing the altitude on it. So, but over time, they've gotten smaller, and these little tiny ones that fit in your pocket now, they'll do just as good as some of the best Trimbles. But the best Trimbles also have all of the 7.5 maps in them. Terrific. So, I think...
Well, you can get those Garmin's now. The Garmin, you can get the 60s and the 62s. They have the maps. People load the maps on there.
Right.
And they're that's really pretty easy. We use them in the redwoods, Garmin 60s, versus using the Trimble because we couldn't wait long enough to get accuracy for location. And we ended up using the Garmin 60s. That's how good they were.
This Garmin beats a Trimble for time in the field. Oh, it's a lot faster. And there isn't that much difference. And then they usually have to go back and correct the Trimble off of a known station to get it absolutely accurate. But once this is set, I mean, you're in good shape. And the new ones, the Oregon version, has a camera in the back of it. So if you decide to take that picture, you've also got the GPS data right at the bottom of the picture. They're about, I think cheapest about $179 to about $400 and some dollars. Ouch. When we're talking big trees, we've all been brainwashed. We think the redwoods are the tallest thing on the face of the earth. Well, in Australia, they have what they call a 500 club. Trees reported over 500 feet tall, and there's a 400 club. The redwoods just barely get into the 400 club. There's 2 recorded eucalyptus over 500 feet tall. And this all came about with the research, forest giants of the world, by a fellow by the name of Al Carter, C-A-R-D-E-R. Anyway, Al's mission was to go around the world and find the largest trees. Now he set some criteria. It had to be at least 10 foot in diameter. So you already know this is going to be a big tree from the start. Well, he got through the old forestry files, and it was cluttered with old reports by competent surveyors, eucalypts, and you've been there, Frank. Today they're quite diminished in size. Almost all of the big ones were either burned out with brush fires or they were logged. These are trees ranging from about 350 feet for a tall tree all the way up to 525 feet. These are really tall trees. The eucalyptus, on one hand, is not a long-lived tree. They're quite short-lived. So trees 400 years old are generally pretty old eucalypts. One species in particular gets up into the thousands. That's a rare thing. And when you watch the 2 trees, the California redwood grow against the eucalyptus, the blue gum, or any of the other really fast-growing species, you're watching the redwood at about 2 to 3 feet a year. And in 1 year, in Hawaii, we watched eucalyptus at 16 to 20 feet per year. And putting on caliper like this, it is amazing the growth on those things. Really dynamic. And that's why they're planted. They're clearing rainforest. And you talk about a super tree, this one's definitely got what it takes. However, up here in Oregon, we can't grow them very well. It's too cold. And just about the time we got the plantation going, we get a big freeze, and that's the end of the plantation. Roseburg Lumber Company got involved in it, a number of the lumber companies, and during the hard freezes, they lost everything. So after that happens, they just go ahead and log them, and they start all over again, because they root sprout, just like a Madrone. You cut them down, they come right back up. So most of the big ones are gone. But way down that height factor situation, you find the coast redwood. Tallest ever records about 425 feet. And we're not too sure about that record either. Most of them are, right now, about 370 some feet is the maximum we have. Douglas fir the same way. Douglas fir is up in British Columbia, 400 and some feet tall. About 411, I think, is the tallest on record. That's a tall tree. Anyway, you're probably tired of talking about trees. Let's go on and I'll see if I can operate this thing. Where is her backup?
Oh, she's hiding.
She's hiding? Oh, that's right. You just run it backwards and it happens.
I have an arm.
Now, some of you folks in here have worked for BLM, and you probably know about this tree. This is up in the Payne Cliffs on the other end of Sam's Valley. And why I put this in here, this Ponderosa Pine just doesn't know how to grow. The branch is a little bit larger than the tree. And one thing you want to remember when you start off in life is you want to make a path easier for other people. And you want to get them enjoying what you do. Well, that's my son, Forrest, standing there with his 2 sons. And that's what we do when we go for a hike. Now, I got away with it on my son. I named him Forrest. My daughter, I got a thumbs down on that. I was going to call her Connie for that didn't work. So, adding a new twist to Madrones. Can anybody out there explain to me what causes this and why you get both right hand and left hand twist on these trunks? This is also up at the same area. Other end of Sam's Valley, up in the Paint Cliffs area.
Poison oak have anything to do with it?
Gee, all I have to do is touch the screen board. This was a discovery. First report of Sergeant Cyprus in the state of Oregon. I was up at Siskiyou Field Institute, and we were doing a pour, a concrete pour, what was called a cap pour on a culvert, because I've been up that road on the upper property. Have any of you been up there on the upper property? Anyway, there's a road that goes up Squaw Creek, up to Squaw Mountain. Anyway, along that road, there are a couple of culverts in there, and one of them was in serious shape. The other one had already been blown out. I mean, here's a 3-foot culvert that's standing up like this in the trees, waving at you. So I told him, I said, you know what? I can bring my equipment in, and I'll pour a cap on that and save that, and the road won't go out for you. So we did, and then we went out a little further on the road, and I was with Tom Feely and Michael Moss, and Tom says, Frank, what is this? And that glory-looking thing there that I have my hand over, that's a young seedling. And Michael was so convinced that one of the groups had planted it up there, I said, well, let's check it out. So we went upstream a little bit. We were finding cones all down the creek, and then we found some bigger branches. A little bit later, I went into Selma, and I got to talking to a woodcutter. He said, yeah, we cut those out of there after the fire. This was a back burn up on Squaw Creek to prevent that fire, the biscuit. If I get the biscuit, that's the biscuit fire, from coming into Selma. Not a good thing. So they did backfires all the way up through that little valley there. Well, they burnt the cypresses in the process. Well, he just happened to be on the fire crew. And he seen a big advantage coming down the road because there was dead snags all over the place. So they went in there and they cut these out. Well, the good thing was, he was kind enough, if I didn't tell who he was, that I got a chunk of the cordwood. They'd actually made some of the wood into lumber. I was really impressed. So anyway, I got the chunk of cordwood. That tree was only 70-some years old. So, you know, it isn't like it's been there forever. I'm down in Mexico. The guy you see there is Boyd Klein, who is now, what, 94 years old? He's getting up there. Anyway, this is in Puebla, Mexico, and this is 80s Bejarite, one of the Mexican firs, and we've never thought that the trees got very big down there until we went in and looked. They're right on par with some of the big firs up here. Cascada de Besaceches. The Besaceches Falls. Anyway, this is a magnificent falls. But what does it hold as this big secret? Well, you'll notice down at the bottom of that 800-foot drop in there, it's kind of a misty area. There's a forest in there. This is one of the refugias for the Chihuahua spruce. And if you want to see them up close, go to Stewart Mainwaring Park in Medford, and 3 specimens. The seed I collected in Mexico are growing there. They're about 18, 20 feet tall. But I got to thinking about this, and I got to thinking about Mount Ashland. All of these spruce are hanging in little relic areas with controlled temperature, coolness, moisture, and that's why they're there. And in Mexico, 2 of the spruces are only in waterfall zones, which tells a lot about what's happening out there in the real world. This global warming may imperil a lot of other conifer species. This was supposed to be an automatic program. I realized I was going to have to pump through it. Anyway, been over to the Chetco Museum, Brookings Harbor. This is the big Monterey spruce. Ponderosa Cyprus. It's the second largest in Oregon. There's actually a larger one up north, but it's slowly coming apart. This is a non-native tree. It was planted here, and it's what I call a super tree because it's a conifer that's just growing out of control. And why it does not perform well down in the native habitat area is it is coated with lichens, which cuts down the photosynthesis. Up here, there's no lichens, it goes full bore. So we got a pretty dynamic tree. This sits right in front of the Technical Museum. Can you read the fine print on that? 6 miles west of O'Brien. This crazy cypress about killed me. I went up all of those drainages, and I mean, there's so much serpentine up there, so much ultramafic rock, and it's such a big area. What was he talking about? I mean, I've got to do a little better than 8 miles west of O'Brien, because I went north, south, west, and 8 miles west, if you take a plane, you're over there, not in Josephine County, you're just into Curry County, at a place called France Meadow, which is one place I haven't been yet. But I did a lot of searching for that, couldn't find it. But of course, the Mystic Fire has been through there. I want to show you where I live. I think a little bit. I think out of the box. It's not like most people. It's all about geology. And you see this little sliver here? Oh, I've got a piece of equipment here that ought to do that. A little sliver right there is where my property's at. It's a serpentine zone, or ultramafic. I like the term ultramafic. It means a lot of magnesium and iron in the soil. This area up here, Gold Hill, is all peroxenite. This is a quartz diorite, and we've got a metavolcanic complex zone in here. We've got dike intrusions, very complex. You've got sandstone materials over here.
Did it gold in there?
Huh?
Did it gold in the land up there?
Yes. We've got the Millionaire Mine, the Eagle Mine, and the Sunrise Mine are all next to my property. So it's a rather diverse geologic area. Well, what do you find in diverse geologic areas? Diverse plants. Because a lot of those plants are relic to those old formations. I do have that. This was an interesting situation here. We got seed. The Koss brothers went up to the Seattle Arboretum, collected some seed. And I ended up with some of the seed too. They called me up to Portland. They said, you know, we got this bed of cypresses, and some of them are growing 3 times faster than the others. I said, you got to have a hybrid. But I couldn't prove it until Bob Adams flew out from Texas. Bob Adams is the world authority on terpenes. And we all know about terpenes. If you got clogged arteries, you know about terpenes, cholesterol. If you're watching a football game, testosterone. That's a terpene. Anyway, cypresses have a whole group of unique terpenes. That's a little close-up of the tree. I wouldn't have it on here if we couldn't prove it. This is Bob Adams. We went up to the Baker Cypress stand on BLM, was up at Clowns Rock, and Bob had to see those cypresses. So I took him in there and showed them to him. He says, you know, this is just like one of the islands I was on. You walk into a real barren scabland, and here's a bunch of these trees. Then I showed him other evidence. There's a browse line on all the trees. And you know something really like cypress? That's been open range up there for a long time. I'm not blaming everything on the cows. Okay, then we got into the terpene composition of both. Okay, you're going to see GLA-AB on one side, and your hybrid over on the left, and Pygmaea on the right. All of the seed collected up the Seattle Arboretum came off of Pygmaea. That's what was curious when these gray-green cypresses came up that were 3 times as tall as the rest of them. And you'll notice as you move down the chart, this doesn't show it real good, but the bolding on there shows the shared relationships of terpenes. another series. These are quite complex. A lot of terpene material. And the end. And you can see right in here, phytoplatidine. Go across there, notice this big one. Missing from glaber, pulls up for about half of the value, just for example. Well, Bob's really convinced that this is another way that we can fingerprint trees. Okay, you remember the article in the Mcnabb Cyprus? That's myself, a little blue thing there, a little leprechaun. I am Irish. At the base of the really tall. I don't know why that's so far off focus. But anyway, this is the tree that's 268.5 feet thick. So we weren't off on the measurement. Another shot. How many of you have gone out to the website, conifers.org? Cool. At least somebody uses it. Anyway, that fellow in the middle there is the individual who started that, and that's one of the best conifer sites I've seen. He's up in Washington, Seattle area.
Where's this plant?
Great, huh?
Where's this plant?
This is some Big Pine campground. You didn't see that in the Mcnabb Cyprus, and I didn't tell you that.
Is that in the outdoor?
Hmm?
There we go.
No, it's where is Big Pine? It's on this. It's on this.
I've got it down.
Brick strip.
That's Merlin.
Right. I've been there, but I can't get the position right. You got me? This is on top of Red Mountain. And sometimes things are just so picturesque up there. I just had to do this. This is Jeffrey's Pine, growing up there in the ultramafic soils. And it's really having a hard time. The whole baseline is screw mulch, bent from the wind, struggling. But it's doing an important thing that most people don't realize among conifers. All of it, you ever been out in the real desert country? Can you notice how those junipers spread to protect the root system? It's exactly what this tree is doing. This is really a harsh habitat. And I know if you've taken the Calmeopsis journal, this is the photograph of gray pine, Mount McLaughlin behind it. And if you've taken the 3-tree hike, anybody done that here? Ah, Cindy. You haven't been on a hike.
Been there.
Okay. Anyway, this is shot across the valley with the gray pine on top of the ridge. This is on my neighbor's property, John Martin's property. This had, until they logged, the largest population of gray pine in the Rogue Valley. And Morris Brothers at Hidden Valley Ranch decided that the beetles were getting their trees, so they wanted everything taken out. Everything over 14 inches went out. That included gray pine. I don't know what the mill did with it when they got it, but they took out some monsters. This is one of the few trees that was left up on the ridge line. Now you know why they call it ghost pine. It has kind of a ghostly appearance. If that didn't work, there it is again. This is an old archival photo, 180 foot tall, minus the mini end. Best we've been able to do today is 160. Chris Earl, conifers.org, Oregon's largest brewer spruce, up in the Tanner Lakes area. This is a monster. We had a heck of a time measuring this. Look at the slope angle here. This tree is married to that diorite formation there. It's got that rock, and the rock's got in. Very impressive tree. And you notice how it's just kind of callousing over and engulfing the rock. This is man's attempt to build conifers. And if you use a cell phone, you know all about this. Beautiful trees. I didn't quite get the species. I think that's a Shasta Red on the left. The other's a pretty sickly specimen. But anyway, when you live in parts of California, you've got to really, upgrade your act. Anyway, everybody knows about this tree. General Sherman, biggest tree in volume on the planet. And I used to hang out at the Crater Rock Museum. And these kids, time and time again, they get the best of it. Oh, they're into dinosaurs, brontosaurus and all that. So one day I asked the question. I said, "How many bronties?" At the time they were called bronties. It's got a new name now. But at the time, as a museum, I said, "How many brontosaurs does it take to make General Sherman?" How many would you think? This tree is huge. Probably about 15. Bronties piled on top of each other to get that kind of mass and volume. Maybe a little bit more. It actually weighs more than brontosaurus. So in weight, it's much heavier. But this, by volume, is the largest tree on the planet. And you don't know how long it took until the crowds cleared so I could get this shot. The only thing I don't like about the shot is the fact that the Parks Department paved an area right up to the, right up almost to the trunk. That's so the tourist could come in and check it out. When I was there, I was the only one speaking English. They had busloads of Japanese. And it was like, "Chotto mate kudasai!" That's, wait a minute, in Japanese. They were overrunning everything. And finally, everybody cleared out. I had to wait so long. I finally got General Sherman. I don't know why they named the tree after General Sherman.
Did they change the name?
I wish they would.
I thought they did.
Because, no, it's still General Sherman. Unfortunately, you know the history of Sherman. He burned his way through Georgia in the south, destroyed a lot of the history, destroyed most of their buildings, burned whole cities. Real good general. Middle name, Tecumseh, a real insult to the Indian by that name, because he was a leader. There's General Sherman again, a little bit of a volume. There it is from a distance. It's not really what I call an impressive tree when you get back and look at it. It's not that tall. But it is massive. And you can see the crowds at the base of it. This is up at Timber Pass. This is Pinus balfouriana. This tree's a monster. About 9,500 feet elevation. And it's a bit of a hike. It's not a mild trail. It is a steep trail. When you get up there, it's a very sterile environment. This tree is about 10 feet in diameter. It's a good sized specimen. Torreya californica. Anybody know that tree? Commonly called the California nutmeg. You know the tree. Yeah, Torreya californica. Anyway, I have the national champion on that, which just blew the record books apart when I turned it in. It was I thought it was a Doug fir when I came up on it. It was so big. And I'll show you a close up. There's the fruit. And this is not a real bad photograph. This thing is not in focus. But anyway, it has a plum-like fruit about this size, much like a taxus. And the Chinese actually eat the fruit on these. Here's a colony of ghost pine or grapevine. We don't use the other word anymore. You know this guy? I've seen him in the woods a few times. Luke Rudiger. And this tree went down last year. This is up in the Applegate, off the trail. And I think we're going to go ahead and get a cookie off of it at the ranger station. Just to see how old it was, but it finally went down. Had a little bit of comp at the bottom of it. It wasn't looking good when we were up there. But this is a trail that's very difficult to find. But Luke is a real cool dude. And he's trying to get the area into, I don't know what they're calling it now, the, trying to think of the peak for the age. Oh, they changed the name on it just recently?
Oh, that's Arnold Mountain.
Is it Arnold Mountain now? Okay.
Lake
It used to be Lake Peak, now it's Arnold Mountain. Well, it seems that the bike and four-wheel drive people are going up there and just tearing the hell out of everything. This has been going on for years.
That's the adopted botanical area.
Yeah, adopted botanical area. I hope we can get them out there, but you know, it's like the old saying, when we ban guns, only the outlaws will have guns. You can't stop those damn dirt bugs. They can go around any barrier that you put out there, and it's kind of scary. There's looking up the tree. You can see that it's got a lot of breakage going up. The ground's looking in good shape. Now let's talk about the Oregon coast. We're waiting for the next big one to come in. The word is tsunami. This is what's left in the forest over there. Masika Beach, you need to go look at this. There's all kinds of layers of forest that have been knocked out. Some of the trees are laying, of course, out of the bank, coming out there 15, 20 feet, enormous trees. Those tsunamis are critical. This was a massive tree. I think it was western red cedar. But you can see it was kind of flipped off later by the waves. Must have been a pretty nice forest in there at one time. Occasionally I have to get out of this world, take a trip to Mars, and import Mars into Oregon. This is the red planet. You know the peak behind it, Preston. You're looking from Oregon up around Weston Peak into California. The tree up there, of course, is the Untitled Pine. It's one of the few trees up there that can tolerate that ultramafic soil. Isn't that a beautiful rock garden? This is all natural. Another discovery this year. I was up on Lone Rock Timber Company's land, and Mike Backen was with me, because you can't get on the property without a timber representative with you. It's a lock gate. We drove in there to check on Tritolea peduncularis, long-rayed rhodea. That's the northernmost location. It's in a creek further upstream from there. It's a dry creek. We were walking down the hill, and the mullen, after they logged up there, they just trashed this area. The mullen took over everything. I mean, it was the worst colonization of mullen I'd ever seen. Anyway, we were walking along, and I said, "What is this, Mike?" And we stopped, and I got a foliage sample, and I went down a little bit further, and it was a branch sticking out with cones on it. All of this had been logged, and I mean, they did a job. But anyway, the cones were Mcnabb, the foliage is Mcnabb, so this was a range extension of Mcnabb. So he calls me back here a few weeks ago, and he says, "I found another one." And this tree is about 4 feet tall, and this one, in fact, died. And they were spraying the mullen, and I won't say one way or another whether or not that killed it, but cypresses are very sensitive to any of the herbicides. There's the tree again. We had to actually cut the mullen out around it so you could find it. This is on Sprignett Butte. Everybody knows where that is. You're going up to Weimer, up to Elderberry Flat. It's on the way up. This is all on private timberland. There's the cones for verification. They don't look like Bakerite either. This is back to Sargentii. That's Michael Moss and Tom Phelan at the site. We made this discovery up Squaw Creek. Another shot of the same. Notice the tape I'm using in metric. Another shot of it. This is the Sargent cypress. Very different cone. Not even close. These cones are pretty well deteriorated. I mean, we're lucky to find a cone that was all together. But the fire's been, what, 9 years ago? So it's been rather harsh on. This is the Mcnabb after a fire. Notice the seedlings coming up. And you got a delayed response, because if you look right in this below center in the picture, you'll see a very young one coming up. The other trees are about 3 years old. So there's a delayed seed response in the species. There's the cones after a fire. My picture, by the way, is a lot better. This is what fires do to cypress. Then it all starts over again. Serotinous cones. This is the, I can call it the world's largest. This is the largest Mcnabb Cyprus. I found this down in Northern California, off of Highway 44. And I I just couldn't get over the sky pattern behind it. This tree is about 60 feet tall, very unusual for a species of conifer. It's about 60 feet wide. Most conifers are very upright though. This is what I talk about logging. This is why a lot of species aren't looking. Because no botanists looked at this before they went in and magned it. I mean, this kind of carnage just, it overwhelms me. Because you've got so much usable material there. This was later turned into biomass. This is up by Flounce Rock. And Tom Feely's in the picture. Who's the old guy from the Sierra Nevadas? Here. This is the new John Muir. And if you looked at him real close, you'd say, "Are you kidding?" We're back at the pine. This is the record pine. Show you another shot of this character. He's in the paper too. Well, they've been doing a lot of LiDAR work off the Oregon coast, and they're going down in these deep canyons. Well, they got this report of the Douglas fir. He said this one's about 350 foot tall. So he hikes down into this narrow ravine to get to it. This is up in the Powers region. Well, what had happened is this tree was on an overhang and it was growing out like this, and the LiDAR took its shot to the bottom of the canyon. Completely disrupted the whole scenario. But anyway, we're up at the Big Pine area. Baker cypress, notice the cones, rounded, all kinds of little pitch blisters on the cone surface. This is right up behind the library. This is my conifer class, Siskiyou Institute. How many of you have taken that class? Too bad. This was a good turn. Well, what we did is we went in and verified the height on the Brewer spruce. And there's two ways to do it. You can use the gun, you can use the phonometer, the staff hypsometer, or you can climb the thing and run a tape from the top. So we had the Ascending the Giants crew there, and they went to the top of the tree and gave us the measurement. This is also up in that area. This is the Big Douglas fir, 10 feet diameter, 237 feet tall, growing right by upper or western Canada. Notice I said Tanner. It's listed as Tanner. This is the big incense cedar up there. And they caught me sleeping. That's Tom Feely without the beard. This is a big western juniper. And you probably have heard about the junipers over there in the Horse Ridge area. About 1,600 years old. It's one of Oregon's oldest trees. This is a big one. This is up in Christmas Valley. The photographer is John Irwin. In fact, every time I appear in a picture, he seems to be taking the picture. This is Larynx occidentalis over at the Starkey hunting area, eastern Oregon, Blue Mountain region. This is the largest one on the planet until its top was blown up. And it still has the largest curve. It's in, I don't know how many of you have, Forest Giants, Pacific Coast, Robert Van Velde. It's mentioned in there. It's a unique little situation because it's on a private parcel. It probably isn't much larger than this area right here. The tree sets right in the middle of it, and it's all Forest Service land around it. It's probably right in the top. But the top, that didn't save the top. You probably recognize these two characters here. Maybe you do. Frank Lang over there, and the other Frank on it. This is Pacific Madrone. Remember that, Frank? Of course. 13 feet in diameter. And it isn't our fault that we're up in the tree. Wasn't it the dog that went up first? This is known as the Council Madrone, and it went down a few years ago. And what happened? See this big limb that we're setting on? Oh, well, the tree got a little bit of snow load, and it was like an inverted tripod. And once you break one of those off, the whole tree splays and falls down. That's a monster.
Where was it?
That's off of the Madrone River down by Redway. And I can tell you, when you go down in that country, be very careful. It's definitely marijuana country, Mendocino County. And I've run into problems down there. Automatic weapon in the face, you know, that thing. You're wondering, okay, we're talking about stomata. Gray pine versus ponderosa. Gray pine's on the bottom, that's where it gets that gray leaf color. There's a type specimen. You've seen all this if you read the county offices. This is a remarkable tree. This is the tree that Eric Rudquist and I hiked into only to find out that it was a stump. But the BLM over in the Coos Bay district had a picture of this, 2 pictures of it in fact. And I asked if I could borrow the picture. What happened is I ended up drawing a sketch off of the picture. And this is back in 1965, 66, in that era. I was taking horticulture, I went out in the field that day. This tree is 17 feet in diameter. Okay, you get up to 180 feet, it's 14 feet in diameter. How big is that? Well, General Sherman at 180 feet is 14 feet in diameter. This was a big Mcnabb Cyprus, Lawsoniana. Magnificent tree. It was cut down. Recently I've learned that they found 2 stumps even larger than this. This is a 17-foot at 12 feet up. The footprint on this was 24 feet. It was huge. Okay, now they found 2 that are 20 feet. And we're trying to get permission to get in and do a ring count. But all of the big 400 cedars are gone. What we have now for a national champion is kind of in the range of up there at 180 feet. That's about where we were at. This tree was a magnificent tree, 245 feet tall, but you'll notice the top's flat. They had a wind shear event that took out the top. It was probably around 270 feet. I measured that tree when I was a senior at Marshfield High School. I was out in the field with Eric Rudquist, who was the BLM timber cruiser. And we were both very disappointed that day when we found the stump out there. It's probably one of the largest trees in Oregon. There's a couple redwoods that I can't report the site on. I told Frank about them. Property owner problem, with people on his property. Well, you can understand why. He went in, he has a road grader. He took the Forest Service roads that were full of potholes and graded the roads. Next thing, he gets a letter from the Forest Service, and he's responsible now for any accident that occurs on that road. Not a happy camper. So when I came into the property, the guns were loaded. And he said, no, you can't report on the redwoods, the largest redwoods in Oregon, by the way, are on this property. 17 feet in diameter, there's 2 of them out there. I can't report on them. Another shot, Tom Feely. Just a little closer shot, you notice the beards there. I was even trying to sell t-shirts up there. And for you bird people who like birds, we got a couple of domestic ducks for you. Let me see, there's Ralph on the left and Betty on the right. You're a good naturalist when you put a hat on a decoy and make them think it's a duck. And that's it. I don't know. I've asked all kinds of. Frank, do you know why they do that corkscrew thing, the trees? And they do both a right turn and a left turn. And I've seen it in pines too. They do both? Yeah, they do both of them. Yeah. No. It's not like the Coriolis effect. I don't know what causes it.
You see that in Hawaii?
Right.
Too close to the vortex.
Is that it?
The vortex is a possibility, but also you.
Yeah, this is, while we've got this up here, this is up in Chihuahua, Basin Satrix Falls. And the neat thing about that is you can actually walk off to the cliff zone, the falls drops down below, and you can walk around the other side. It's a box canyon. Beautiful area. very difficult to get to because the little town of Sachix is kind of an outlaw town, so they don't get enough money to fix their roads. And I almost lost my van in that town. We go along and the puddles are full of water, and all of a sudden the van just about turned over. That puddle was about 3 feet deep. Really threw me off. But it's
Well, Frank, if those trees are native to an area that's missed all the time,
yes.
why do they do so well in Medford on Stewart? It's hot there.
I know it's hot there, and the other puzzling thing is that Creole, Mexico, it gets much colder than it does here. They've had a -11 for over a week down there, Fahrenheit. That is pretty dramatic. People never think it gets that cold in Mexico. The Creole is at the height of Mount Ashland, 7,500 feet. So it's in a, you know where Seneca, Oregon, Ukiah is? Okay, it sets in a cold air drainage valley, high altitude. Creole's the same way. And in those situations, you get extremely low
So
temperatures.
you have to water those trees pretty well?
They water them every day.
Every day.
That's in a park, and they get fertilized, and they're too much TLC. In the wild,
Maybe not too much.
but they're doing
It's
well.
wrong habitat.
Yeah. But another thing about this particular spruce, most spruces do not like heat. And the Chihuahua spruce is very well adapted to the Medford climate. And when I sent this material to Chris Earl, they had it listed as Zone 8. I said, just a minute. These trees have endured. You know, the icicles on the Catholic Church were 3 feet long and 6 inches at the top. You got to be cold for a little bit of time to put on icicles like that. And it was chilly. The Tarahumara Indians that live in the area, a lot of them froze to death during those 2 cold snaps. But that's when those fronts come all the way down the Rockies, they go all the way into Mexico. By the time they hit Durango, they warmed up enough that it's only like 14 or 15 degrees. The Chihuahua takes a hard run up in those higher mountains. So, any other questions?
So there's treats down there, and
Okay.
we go down there. Dr. Frank is going.
I kind of had to jump and do this because Christy calls me at the last minute. She says, I'm going on vacation. Frank, could you fill in? I said, I have nothing. So what you got is nothing.
Not a bad nothing at all.